Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's co-founder and CEO. Hi, David. How have you been?
Hey, Jesse. All is good. It's been a good week so far, and we're going to top it off with a great guest today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And you know this guest, so it makes things easier for me.
Yes, Conor and I go back a little bit, and he's waiting here to join us. So let's bring him in.
Let's do it. So Conor McKenna is director at LUMA Partners. He drives strategic advisory with focus on digital media and marketing. He has extensive investment banking experience. Conor consults on strategic transactions for tech companies, and Conor's expertise spans AdTech, CTV, commerce media, and digital audio. So let's welcome in LUMA Partners, Conor McKenna. Welcome, Conor.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you for having me, Jesse and David.
Absolutely. We're great. We're really happy to have you on here, Conor. So let's kick it off. Why don't you kick it off for us and tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to join LUMA? And then for those that are not familiar with LUMA, why don't you tell listeners a little bit about LUMA Partners as well?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, my whole career has been in and around investment banking. And I joined LUMA about 9 years ago now, which feels like a lifetime ago, and many lifetimes in the AdTech and MarTech ecosystem. I joined actually via a cold LinkedIn outreach from another person who was there, who we had same alma mater, same prior job, somehow never connected. My response was absolutely not. I'm doing great at my job and loving it. But let's go get drinks, and drinks turned to dinner. And 6 hours later, I was like, I guess I'm leaving my job and I'm coming to LUMA. And the reason really was, before this, I worked in insurance investment banking. So you have to imagine super exciting stuff, right? Compared to digital media and ad tech. And what I realized was I was good at doing the traditional investment banking stuff, right? All, valuations, digging in the numbers. But the stuff that got me very excited was digging into strategy, sort of figuring out how companies fit together, where's the future headed, all that type of stuff, and doing so in, frankly, a more exciting category. And that's kind of exactly what LUMA does. So that's why, I had been promoted 2 months before and then left to join LUMA, and I've now been here for 9 years. And so what LUMA is, we're at in essence, an M&A advisory shop focused at the intersection of media, marketing, and technology. We're very well known for things like our LUMAscapes and other thought leadership that we put out in the ecosystem. Some people think we're like a LUMAscape company or consulting company, but actually, we only make money when advising on mergers and acquisitions. What we do is we try to take a very focused and deep approach. So this is such a massive market, right? $1 trillion global TAM around marketing, been growing 20% a year for a decade plus. It's incredibly fragmented, a la the LUMAscapes. It's incredibly complex and dynamic. Like every 6 to 8 months, something big changes, and everyone needs to react. And so it requires a deeper strategic advisor, a little bit more nuanced approach to getting M&A done. And that's sort of exactly what LUMA steps in to do, and really focus around where's the future headed? What do companies need to do to get in front of that? Who are the growth companies that are out there that are helping solve those problems, and sort of strategic matchmaking to make M&A deals happen?
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting transition from the insurance business to
yeah, slightly.
AdTech.
A funny anecdote on that: when I left my job because I just been promoted, the head of the bank said, "Look, Conor, insurance is always going to go like this, right? Just sort of tick up, and digital media is going to go like this." And I was like, "Well, that was what I was going to say to you." So I think we're on the same page. That's the ride I'm looking forward to getting on. So.
Yeah. You definitely went from sort of the slow ride to the roller coaster, right? So, and it's an exciting industry. And I think that, pretty much everybody in the industry knows of the LUMAscapes. And I think that, the value there that is provided to the industry as a whole at the same time is just this incredible insight into sort of everything that's going on. in the industry, whether it be data or programmatic or on the publisher side, whatever it is. There's so many different pieces of the puzzle. And I think that the LUMAscape has done something for the industry to allow everyone to sort of see all those pieces of the puzzle sort of put together in one visual. And I think that that's an interesting value that Luma provides by providing those LUMAscapes. And it gives sort of everyone the picture of, what the industry really looks like in a sort of a snapshot in time, right?
Yeah, but though still limited by the challenge of a 2x2 sheet of paper, like a flat surface with boxes. So
yeah, where the logos are like, you can barely see them at some point because there's so many. But what's interesting is when if anyone else has done this, and I've done this, where I've compared them, looking at them, year over year, and you see all of the sort of combinations that happen, right? So you can see all the work that Luma partners and others have done to create sort of the merging of different categories together through the merging of different companies. And it's super interesting that way. But I think at the same time, right, it puts you guys in a position to have some interesting insights as to where the industry is going. And so I'd love to have that conversation and talk a little bit about that, the changing ecosystem. For me, it's, I'm always talking about the data, right? So the changing data ecosystem. But I think that also everything that we do in the data industry, in my industry, in my sort of piece of the industry on the data side is all related to, the AdTech MarTech side as well. Yep. So, we all sort of change together. And so love to get your thoughts on what that looks like and where you see things changing going forward. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think one, just in 9 years covering this sector and sort of being deep in it, one of the things we've seen is that, so much business change is coming around software, which is leveraging data. And so the sort of purview of what AdTech and MarTech fits just keeps getting wider and wider, right? And so like there's just changing happening from that perspective, almost no matter what, like what this captures, while it feels narrow maybe at the outset, is actually exceptionally broad. But I think importantly, in the data landscape, right, there's just, and we've been going through it for a number of years, but some fundamental changes happening around what the advertising technology and some of the marketing technology ecosystems have been built upon, right? So whether it's been regulatory changes, things like GDPR or the various state laws from California and Colorado and others, to platforms themselves making data restrictions, Apple's ATT policies, Google is coming cookie deprecation. We're just undergoing some massive shifts in the data ecosystem. And so we try to look at is, okay, we see these coming. What does that actually mean? And it means two things generally, right? There's going to be big challenges, but anytime there's big change, there's also massive opportunities. So, challenges around things like one-to-one targeting on the open web, how people used cookies and synced them and matched them is completely changing. Things like measurement, multi-touch attribution, identity, and even things just like Facebook advertising, right? With Apple ATT challenges, the customer acquisition cost in there had gone through the roof. They're starting to solve more and more of it now, but it has massive implications to businesses that were sort of built on finding new customers by leveraging that channel. So that's sort of the challenges side. It also creates tons of opportunities. So you've got things like contextual data, creative, right? So we've optimized. If you think about advertising technology, it's like the who, the what, and the where. And we've spent a decade plus now sort of optimizing who you're targeting and where you're targeting them. But there hasn't been a ton of optimization on the creative side. And we're seeing more and more tech focus on that part of the channel. It increases the importance of first-party data. And you see this across the board from, large publishers to, large retail platforms, the AVOD or CTV players, all thinking about how to leverage their own data. And that will, dovetail maybe a little bit into our next category. then all the technology allows that to be possible, right? CDPs, leveraging logged in identifiers, first party identity graphs, alternative ID graphs. Like, we're just undergoing this sort of fundamental shift right now, which is fascinating to watch.
Yep, it's a great shift and a good shift into that next topic, the growing importance of first-party data and the new first-party data networks. David, do you want to kick us off on this topic? Because I know this is near and dear to BDEX's heart.
Yeah, I do. But I actually want to backtrack to one other thing, because I'm curious to get Conor's thoughts on AI. Where do you think that AI fits in to the whole AdTech MarTech conversation, and forget ChatGPT, because the one thing, if there's anything that I've been talking about a lot, is the fact that we're trying to educate the world that there's a lot more to AI than just ChatGPT. There are already technologies for driving creative and driving ad targeting and data that uses AI. And so I'm curious where you see that these technologies going and playing a part in the future landscape.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I even dating back like 4 or 5 years, when people are starting to talk a lot about AI, right? Everyone's always jumps on whatever the buzziest thing is and puts it into the part of their pitch. That AI was already part of this. It's not, I think in this landscape, it's not so much having AI, it's how the AI is being used. So it's sort of the applications on top of AI. I think I think there'll be some models that are the AI platforms, and other things they'll probably build on top of them, because it's just the amount of data and processing power to be the sort of core AI engine is going to be very challenging. There's tons of ways that AI is going to be leveraged, from optimizing campaigns and data to simplifying the creation of advertising, to speed things up, potentially leveraging it on more personalized ways, much faster iteration of what performs, and finding things that perform well. So I mean, I like you said, it's already been in parts of this ecosystem. I mean, but the cross between AI and ML, right? Like, we're sort of those who are graduating into true AI versus more machine learning, but it's, ultimately, faster, more efficient optimization. And I think as you get into some of the generative stuff, it actually just opens up more of that. Do I think it's like, I see it much more as a tool than a replacement. So like, I don't think AI replaces agencies or things like that around generative AI. It's all about how do you use it, and it's that's going to be where the opportunities sit.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Jesse, now that transitions us actually good into first party data, because we've been talking at BDEX for a couple of years now, the growing importance of first party data. Like you mentioned earlier, all the compliance changes, the tracking limitations, all those things are making it more and more important for companies to concentrate and figure out how to leverage their first party data. And it's interesting. What's really interesting is, some of these retail media networks there's everybody's trying to basically become an ad network. And what a lot of companies are realizing is like, hey, if they have a really big audience, and especially if they're in retail, then all of a sudden they have an opportunity to leverage all this first party data that they have access to become an ad network, and to leverage that in ways that hadn't been done before. Personally, I think that there's also an opportunity for first party data in combination with machine learning and or AI as a whole, to create new opportunities for targeting as well. But I'd love to get your take on what you're seeing. I know that I'm sure you've been following all the retail media networks, and love to know what you see going on in the industry with respect to first party data.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has been a trend that's been going on for some time, right? Where people have started realizing they need to really have a sort of every company that is touching consumers or trying to attract consumers needs to have a very strong data strategy and sort of a fundamental articulation of what they're trying to capture, how they're trying to use it, where can they capture data, because there are, once you get that in place, there are many opportunities to leverage that. And so, retail media platforms realize, wow, we have a ton of people coming to our sites. They're spending time. They're showing intent. We, sell shelf space in our stores. Why are we not selling shelf space online, right? And even better, online, it's zero incremental cost or to be on the page. And so here's an opportunity for us to make a ton of margin by leveraging the fact that we have a brand that people want to come and buy on. And so we should be taking advantage of that fact and driving dollars to our bottom line from that. And frankly, it can be, especially in, the search and promoted listings, it's better for the company. It's better for the merchants to be able to buy into that and get some incremental dollars where they can. And it can often be a better experience for the consumers. So I think that's sort of on the retail side. Broadly speaking, look, as you lose cookies and third-party identifiers, it just naturally means that there needs to be sort of having that your first-party data and being able to connect with those that have first-party data becomes more and more important. And one thing we're seeing with this is a big shift in sort of power dynamics from some demand to supply. So in a cookie-driven world, and third-party data world, there was a lot of power on, especially in the AdTech world, on the demand side, right? They sort of chose what audiences they wanted to use. They could find those audiences kind of anywhere. It lost a lot of power to the supply. In a world where a lot of those are going away, you need to go find the places that have robust customers and know who they are and know how to allow you to target them. And so that's bringing some power back to the supply side, and particularly those. I think it shifts a little more to the head of the supply, but also within that, it's those who've focused on this, who've focused on really, driving their data strategy, making sure they're capturing the right kind of data. They've got it stored well so they can actually leverage it and make it addressable. So that's sort of like overarching trend that's been happening. I think one of the challenges here is going to be the scalability. First-party data doesn't have the scale that you can find when you're doing broader third-party data targeting. Even when you're targeting a Walmart audience off-site, they may be able to find 1 million consumers, but if you're trying to reach 20, you start to run out of that scale pretty quickly. And so that's going to be the interesting thing to see how that plays out. How some of these other IDs play out. How AI gets leveraged into it, how contextual, how creative, all of that. So I think we're sort of going to be figuring that out, but it's a little uncertain right now. And part of that uncertainty is just, Google keeps changing what the data is when cookies will go away, and these ecosystems tend to be slow to react until they absolutely have to. So.
Yeah, I think you gave me the perfect opportunity to pitch BDEX because in all honesty, I mean, what you said about scale is super interesting. It's a problem that we're trying to help brands solve, and that's the fact that, like you said, if you have 1 million users, that bought a certain product or whatever it is, you could have 10,000 users that bought a certain product. That's great. That's great first-party data. But you want to reach 1 million or you want to reach 20 million. How do you do that? And that's something that we're trying to solve for our clients, which is ultimately looking at the data around that consumer that is your customer, and using ML and a combination of AI in the sense that we can feed the algorithm with new data as it grows, as you get and convert, to be able to find more people like those customers and build an audience that can then be pushed out to pretty much any ad tech platform of people that look like your best customers, and then continuously feed that model so that you can improve that targeting continuously. And so I think that the scale is definitely a problem, but I think that it's something that we'll be able to solve, something that we're solving right now for some of our clients that are, and it's working. So.
And solving via like using other identifiers in the ecosystem and things of that nature, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the key to it, is that we're not worried about cookies or anything like that. It doesn't have anything to do with that. If you have a robust identity graph, and if you have the ability to see consumer activity as it's happening in real time, then we can update what's happening in real time with those consumers. Do we serve an ad to that consumer? When we serve that ad, did they come to your website? Did they make a purchase? Feed that back into the algorithm and say, hey, that's really interesting. Now the algorithm is learning, okay, this type of person is really working, and continuously learning, so that it can hone in on the people that look just like those customers that are coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really love Omni IQ, just not just for programmatic advertisers. I know we focus on that a lot, but it's important. I like ChatGPT too, because it's teaching everybody, what AI can do. And some marketers, they don't necessarily think of AI for understanding their audience, but all marketers obsess over the audience. I mean, I can obsess over the audience all day. I would love to know everything I could about them, because it's going to help me write better for them. It's going to help me make better designs for them, help me communicate with them, not just target ads. So, Omni IQ, it's really interesting because it takes AI and it puts it in the hands of all marketers across all businesses to allow them not just to target their audience, but really understand who they are.
Yeah, well, in some cases, right, like realize they may have been wrong about who their audience is. I think that's one of the interesting things here, particularly as first-party data. Like one of the things we're seeing with first-party data, and you see this with the rise of data clean rooms, and ramp up was last week, and a lot of what we're talking about was data collaboration, and actually Terry, our CEO, put out a thing the other day, like, let's get away from talking about data clean rooms and just talk about data collaboration platforms, right? Because that's sort of where this ecosystem's heading. And that's, there's retail media, that's the on-site stuff. And then there's the off-site, and the promise of like, how do you tie ad spend to commerce, right? And that's obviously the ultimate goal of all marketing, right? Is to drive dollars. And as you bring AI into all this, I think what you'll find is like there are marketers sometimes that get really focused on like, oh, this is our customer, that's what we want to go target and do that. But ultimately what they want to do is just see who's buying and be optimizing things to do that. And that's where AI and some of these tools will be very interesting, where they can actually find the stuff that you're missing or you didn't realize and target themselves. Like, they're not, instead of saying, oh, I think that this type of person is the one who will buy our product. Like, no, you shouldn't matter, right? We're going to go and A/B test and do all these quicker tests to figure out who's going to buy, and where we're finding traction, we're going to automatically, or the AI or the optimization is automatically going to start going towards that, because ultimately you're not trying to drive audiences to see your ad. You're trying to drive people to buy your products, right? And
exactly.
And then like that sort of optimization tied to commerce data and all those things that happens with the ability to collaborate on data, find those signals, and again, comes all back to a core of like having a very solid first-party data foundation, is where things get very interesting.
Absolutely. If you have first-party data, you have the power to really understand everything. It's like you said, we don't want to just send people to the ad. And we don't, honestly, really, as a marketer, we don't just want them to buy once. We want to understand the people who are coming back again and again and again. Yeah. And if we're really great about our data, we can understand who is coming just once and buying just once, and who is coming back again and again and again. So absolutely, I couldn't agree with all of this more. But I know that, in the promotion of this, we were talking about CTV, commerce media, AdTech consolidation. And so I'm sure the audience, I saw a couple comments about CTV, people wanting to learn more about it. It seemed like from a novice sort of perspective. So if you could touch on all of these, sort of what they are, what you think about it, and then sort of get into, the nitty gritty on it.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time for all of that, but I could talk in an hour on each of these topics individually. So Look, for CTV, the way I often people call this connected TV, right? The big screen in your living room that you're now streaming on instead of using broadcast and cable as much on. For us, we like to think about CTV as convergent TV, and this is something we've been harping on for sort of since I started, so about 9 years at LUMA, which was this coming together of digital video and the TV ecosystem, the traditional TV ecosystem. And at the time, everyone was on either side. Digital video is like, we're going to absolutely destroy TV, just like we did newspaper, just like we did everything else. And the TV guys had the same thing, right? Now, digital video is all UGC. That's never going to take off. And what we've seen over the last 9 years is this convergence of the two. And I'd still say we're pretty early in that. What's been fascinating is from a consumer perspective, this is pretty well converged, right? Most of us don't think about, do I want to watch something on cable or on streaming or on this channel? We just want to watch a show and we're going to go find however we want to do it. Increasingly, that's obviously happening more on streaming, so more delivered via internet protocol than via your cable. But the back end of these things has not. So it's still in early innings of really converging on the advertising channels, how things are sold, how they're managed across, shows and AVOD and free ad supported streaming and traditional cable and broadcast. And so that's really where we've done a ton of focus, is on the back end of that. So what are the technologies that are helping bringing these things together? What's making advertising in a streaming environment better? How are you bringing supply to the table? How are you bringing demand to the table? How are you bringing new advertisers? So that's really a lot of the area we focus. We've done a bunch of M&A in the sort of the infrastructure and sort of consolidation of AdTech towards some of those channels. So things like the creation of Magnite, which is arguably the largest CTV SSP, which was started from the coming together of Rubicon Project and Telaria at the end of 2019, and then added on SpotX to that in 2021. And so, it's a fascinating ecosystem. There is a ton of dollar at play because this is still one of the largest advertising channels if you take TV holistically. Consumer time on these channels is continuing to go up, and yet the ad experience is frankly pretty bad. Like I'm sure you guys watch some advertising supported streaming, and reach and frequency isn't really working that well yet in many places. It's sometimes, you see the same ad over and over again, and everyone's still trying to figure out where they sit, right? So they're shifting, Disney Plus and all these other apps, and now they're opening up advertising, even at Netflix level, to make sure they're capturing more dollars. So it's a massive spending ecosystem that's undergoing fundamental change. And the other part of this, and why CTV, commerce media, AdTech consolidation was part of it, is it's also a little separated from the challenges that the open web ecosystem has. It's not a cookie-based ecosystem. The targeting is much more tied to your IP address, and frankly, it's not you don't have millions and millions of publishers like you do in digital. You've got dozens of very large publishers that make premium content. So the value prop and sort of where the control dynamics are very different.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting landscape, and it's interesting with the advertising supported model versus the subscription model, and the talk of others like Netflix advertising model and things like that going on. It'll be interesting to see what changes happens there. I also think it's interesting when you think about the hardware. I mean, when Apple TV first came out, even before it came out, the rumor was that Apple was coming out with a TV. And instead, it was a box that connects to your TV, right? Now you have the likes of Roku saying, "Hey, we're not going to be a device that you connect to your TV anymore. We're going to actually start making TVs." And so it'll be interesting also to see what happens to that landscape as others start to do something similar, or as TiVo's operating system comes into more TVs and is built directly into the TV system. which obviously would be competing with Roku and LG and Samsung as well.
What's at the heart of all that? First party data and controlling the consumer experience. Yeah. Thus you can, if you garner enough consumer base or you have enough data, you can either, you control access, so you can make margin that way, or you can make margin on selling the advertising and making that possible. And you see companies like Vizio and LG and Samsung all making, they're all big ad networks now too. Based on things like the channels that they create in their own experience, as is Roku, right? Roku is an advertising business, not a hardware business.
Oh yeah. What 80 something % of their business is from advertising. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So and those dynamics keep playing out, right? Who gets the data, how is it leveraged? And so that's why this ecosystem is so fascinating.
And I love how you loop that all back into the value of first party data, because it's true. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, each of those platforms are going to have a wealth of data, right, of your viewership data, and be able to use that for ad targeting. And hopefully that ad targeting gets better, because I agree with what you said. Like, frequency capping just isn't making sense right now. And you're seeing the same ads over and over again. And quite frankly, they're not even targeted that well. But hopefully that will continue to improve, and hopefully the first party data that they collect, they'll get to a point where they're actually, using that to help target the ads as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And then, tying back to even commerce media, that's another, like, sort of the overlap of commerce and performance is coming into the CTV ecosystem as well. So, what that is like, how do we, traditionally you think of advertising on TV as brand reach, right? And frequency. It's not that targeted. It's really based on, general demographics. But as it moves more to delivered via IP versus cable, there's more opportunities to make things personalized. There's more opportunity to target, but there's also more opportunities to measure not just down to, who did I reach, but actually who bought, right? And how do we drive lower level performance metrics as part of our optimization in the TV ecosystem. So there's some growing players on the demand side of that, and working with supply and data partners who are making it possible. And you have things like Walmart and others wanting to make sure their audiences can be bought into the CTV environment, right? How do you leverage data about purchases that the retailers and commerce platforms have, and actually use that into the CTV environment? So ideally upper funnel advertising with lower funnel performance, right? That's the holy grail.
Yeah. And one other thing that we listed about talking about was consolidation in ad tech.
Yeah, that's right.
So I know that, I'm sure in your 9 years, you've seen that roller coaster, right? Where, 1 year there's a ton of consolidation, the next year, not so much. Where do you see us in that roller coaster pattern right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say some of that roller coaster is what's hot, right? So what's the capability that everyone thinks they need to have at that moment in time? You could arguably say CTV and commerce media are sort of those types of things right now. Look at anyone's pitch deck, right? And they're throwing that and AI, right? Add that to the mix. But I think we've been going through a longer arch of maturation in the ad tech space, where and so naturally you in any sort of given market, you have consolidation as the market matures. Usually you have hundreds of companies, and they, I think we've seen in some analyses around this before that, often powers down to, 3 big players or things of that nature. This is an interesting one because there's thousands of companies. The tech also keeps changing. So we're definitely in a place much more now where there's winners and losers, and frankly, scale is an important differentiator in this ecosystem. And so that's why you would see consolidation, right? People need to come together to create scale in certain situations in order to compete, be competitive, and really, sort of survive. You also just see opportunities where at the same time, because things are changing, you'll always see startups, sort of being at the bleeding edge of where the next technology is going. And you'll see the bigger players buy into that. You go back to when I started at LUMA, the buyers had to be the big tech players, right? They were outside platforms that were trying to buy ad tech, whether it was, big tech or even, the telcos or some of the data companies like, Oracle and Adobe. What you've seen over the last few years is actually now there's a lot more endemic consolidation. So, you've got players that are in the ad tech space that are large enough to actually do pretty sizable M&A themselves. And you're seeing a lot more of those deals happen. We're at a flow right now of the ecosystem where there's sort of, there's like negatives and positives, right? So there's like macro challenges and, valuations have come down a lot, which means buyers maybe will get things cheaper, but if they're using their currency or their stock, they actually, it's harder for them to use that to buy. And you've got seller expectations are at different places than buyers tend to be. But I definitely think we're seeing consolidation. There's a lot of talk if you just take broadly speaking on venture dollars and growth equity and things of that nature. A lot of companies who raised a lot of money, in 2021 and at very high valuations are going to have to figure out what they do if they're not profitable businesses. You'll have some consolidation, call that capitulation consolidation. But more broadly speaking, and where we really focus is just what is the underlying trend of the sector? And the underlying trends are consumers use more digital channels. There's more opportunity to leverage data for addressability. In every different channel is now focused more and more on this, and tools are being built for those, which means the natural flow is more technology coming to the space, which means more people are going to, need to acquire to get in front of it, right? Because building takes a long time, and sometimes you don't have that time just given the speed to market that it requires to get in front of some of these opportunities.
Yeah, well, 6 months in this industry is a year.
Yeah, exactly.
So absolutely right.
Oh man. Well, that was a really great one. And I don't want to say depressing one, but I had to take a couple deep breaths there while you were talking. I apologize. I'm plugging my computer in so it doesn't die. But we need to get to our fourth topic.
Jesse, you just went on mute.
You went on mute, yeah. Not yet.
We lost you.
Can you hear me?
All right.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, I plugged in my computer and it switched the mic. The tech stacks. We need to get to tech stacks, and we have a couple post-topic questions if we still have time in 7 minutes. So I was just switching topics into tech stacks. We ask all of our guests, what are some of your favorite tools that you and your team use on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're bankers, so I'm not a technologist, so we're not using deep technology. I use pretty basic stuff, right? If anyone follows LUMA, we post a lot and we do a lot of big talks and stuff of that nature. All that's on PowerPoint, so use PowerPoint every single day, Excel every single day to dig into financials and things of that nature. I increasingly use LinkedIn a ton for discovery of companies, reaching out to people, connecting with people in the ecosystem. So that's pretty critical to some of what I do. Those are the major ones. I was telling you guys before, and I'll throw this out here because I think it's an interesting one, but met with a founder yesterday of this company called Locker, LOCKR. That's all about how to better control your email, where, we all get tons of emails every single day. And this is it doesn't necessarily take them away, but it gives you much easier ways to make filters. So if you're getting like an airline, and instead of getting every single email, you can actually set it up where you just get the, flight notifications and confirmation, but you don't have to really do anything to do that. And then you can use that in all different platforms. So something my personal email has become a glut that is hard for me to manage right now. And I prefer to be an email zero type of person. So it's weighing on me. So that's a new tech stack thing I'm looking into.
Oh, that's awesome. I think I got them all. So I got PowerPoint, LinkedIn, and the Locker, LOCKR. Did I get that correctly? Okay.
So
yeah, email zero is a super challenge these days for sure.
Definitely. Well, we've got 5 more minutes, so maybe we can fit in one post-topic question. So Conor, if you don't mind me asking, if you could go back when you first came back into this industry, what is the number one piece of advice you would give yourself?
I think the number one piece of advice I'd give myself is sort of embracing that, like, what you don't know, or embracing that you're not expected to know what you don't know. This is such a complex industry that I'd come in and sit in meetings and felt like everyone knew exactly what was going on, and sort of intimidating to ask questions. And the more and more you get in, like, as David said, 6 months is a year here. So things are changing so fast. Like, everyone is learning in every one of those sessions, and sort of, there's no problem speaking up and asking those questions, or admitting that you don't know something, right? You're not expected to know where the bleeding edge of all this tech is at all times. And that's something that, personally is something I struggle with, especially as I was younger in my career and wanted to come off smart and like I knew what was going on. And, sometimes it's easier to just be like, wait, stop. What did you say? I don't know what that is. Or I've heard that, but I actually have no idea. Can you explain it to me? So that would probably be my number one piece of advice, particularly if anyone coming into the AdTech ecosystem.
That's good advice.
Yeah, it's great. It's great advice. And the reality is everybody's always learning, right? I mean, everything's always changing. And so we're always constantly learning new things, and new technologies come out constantly. And so,
yeah, and we don't make it easy with the 3-letter acronyms.
there's many of them for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As I guess we create some of that with the LUMAscapes, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
Saying I don't know is a superpower.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's okay to make mistakes too, because then we learn, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that was all really great. Well, Conor, as we wrap up, where could listeners find you if they wanted to contact you after the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn or Twitter are probably the best places. I'm, Conor McKenna on LinkedIn, obviously, and at Conor J McKenna on Twitter. So people can find me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And in closing, you can find the Deconstructing Data podcast on all major apps. I shouldn't say all major apps, all major podcast apps, YouTube, TikTok, and LinkedIn and Twitter as well, and social media. And also, if you were listening today and you heard what we were talking about in terms of AI and understanding your audience and expanding that audience, then you should definitely go check out Omni IQ. Just simply go to BDEX.com and there's a try for free button. But I'll just go ahead and pull the QR code up here. I have no data to know whether anyone's ever used this, but we'll just keep pulling it up. But if you sign up for Omni IQ, you don't need a credit card, and you just upload a list of your first party data, a CSV file, and you can get free analytics on birth year, household income, and gender. And then if you like what you see, of course, you can upgrade to learn more or expand that audience. It's really pretty awesome. David, well, thanks first of all for making Omni IQ a reality. But is there anything I missed on it that you would want to add?
Nope, I think that's good. I think that we talked about it a little bit on the show today, and one of the great things about it is the ability to build audiences or extend audiences of people that look just like your best customers. So that's our key thing. And lastly, thank you so much, Conor, for joining us. This has been great. Appreciate you joining us on the show, and look forward to chatting again in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Thank you so much. See you next week, Deconstructing Data audience. Bye-bye.